The email came in at 4:37 on a Thursday afternoon, and I read it 3 times, standing in the hallway outside the conference room because I couldn't quite believe what it said. Senior Project Lead, effective immediately. The words just sat there on my screen, not moving, while the fluorescent lights hummed above me, and someone from accounting walked past wheeling a cart of file boxes. I pressed my back against the wall and let out this slow, shaky breath. 4 years. 4 years of staying late, of driving through February ice storms to client sites in Mississauga, of eating lunch at my desk because there was always something else that needed doing. And now this. I called my husband from the parking garage. His phone rang 4 times and went to voicemail. I texted him. Then I sat in my car for a few minutes with the heat running, holding my phone, smiling at nothing in particular. He called back 20 minutes later, while I was already on the 401. Hey, he said. He sounded distracted. I could hear the TV in the background. Hey, I said, I have news. I got the promotion. A pause. Not a long one, but long enough that I noticed it. Oh, yeah? Cool. That was it. Cool. Not that's incredible, or I knew you would, or even let's go out tonight. Just cool, the same word he'd use if I told him I found parking near the grocery store. I've been working toward this for 2 years, I said, and I hated that my voice went small when I said it. I know. That's great, babe. The TV volume lowered slightly. Hey, listen. I need to talk to you about something when you get home. I should have known right then. There was something in the way he said it. Not nervous exactly, but careful. The way you say something when you've already decided how it ends. When I got home, my husband was sitting at the kitchen island with his laptop open and a mug of coffee going cold beside him. He'd been laid off 8 months earlier from a project management role he'd had for 6 years, and since then he'd been consulting, which mostly meant he had a lot of calls that never seemed to turn into contracts, and a lot of ideas that never quite got off the ground. I hung up my coat. I poured myself a glass of water. I waited. My brother called, he said. His younger brother, 29 years old, living in Calgary with his girlfriend, who was not working, and their dog, and a lease that was, apparently, ending. They're in a tough spot, my husband said. The landlord isn't renewing, and they've been having a hard time. Okay, I said slowly. I told him they could stay with us for a bit, just until they get sorted. I set my glass down. You told him? I mean, I said I'd ask you, but I didn't think you'd say no. It's family. Here's what I did not say. That our house in Scarborough was a semi-detached, with 2 bedrooms and 1.5 bathrooms and approximately 0 extra space. That his brother's girlfriend and I had never once had a conversation that didn't end with me feeling like I'd said something wrong. That just until they get sorted with his brother historically meant anywhere from 6 weeks to 6 months. Here's what I said instead. When? Next weekend. You already told them next weekend. He had the grace to look slightly uncomfortable. They needed an answer. I looked at him for a long moment. Then I picked up my glass and went upstairs. I lay on my bed in the dark for a long time that night, staring at the ceiling. I thought about the email. I thought about the parking garage and the slow exhale and the feeling, just for a few minutes, that everything I'd worked for was finally paying off. Then I thought about the way he said cool. They arrived on a Saturday with 2 SUV loads of stuff and a dog named something I could never remember, some kind of grain, oat or rye or something, who immediately chewed the corner off the area rug in the living room. My brother-in-law was fine, mostly, quiet. He helped with dishes and said thank you when I cooked. His girlfriend was another matter. She had this particular way of looking at things in my house, like she was appraising them. She'd pick up something from a shelf and turn it over and set it back at a slightly wrong angle, and I'd watch her do it and feel this specific kind of prickling under my skin. She didn't work. She'd had a job in marketing in Calgary, she told me once, but it wasn't the right fit. She was figuring out her next move. In the meantime, she was home a lot. On my couch, with my Wi-Fi, walking around my kitchen in socks, opening my fridge at 11 a.m. like she was looking for something I'd forgotten to buy. I was now senior project lead at an infrastructure consulting firm, with 17 people reporting to me and a project in Brampton that was already 12 weeks behind schedule when I inherited it. I was leaving the house at 7:15 and getting home at 6:30. I was making more money than I ever had in my life. And I was coming home to someone else's girlfriend, watching reality TV on my couch. My husband thought this was fine. "Give her time," he'd say. "She's been through a lot." When I asked what exactly she'd been through, he'd look at me like I'd asked something mean. I started noticing other things, small things at first. A bottle of wine I'd been saving for a specific occasion, opened and half empty on the counter. My good shampoo used down to the last inch. The thermostat set to 23 degrees when I'd set it at 20. I mentioned the thermostat to my husband. He said I was being rigid. I mentioned the wine. He said it was just wine. I stopped mentioning things. 6 weeks in, on a Tuesday evening, I found out that my husband had transferred $800 from our joint account without telling me. I found out the way you find out about things you weren't supposed to find out about. I was paying a bill on mine and noticed the balance was lower than it should have been. I went through the transaction history. $800. He transferred to his brother 3 days ago. I asked him about it that night. He was in the kitchen making a sandwich. He needed it for a security deposit, my husband said, not looking up. For their next place. "You transferred $800 from our account," I said. "Without asking me." "It's a joint account." "That's not the point. He's my brother." I counted to 5 in my head. "When are they moving out?" He finally looked up. "They're looking. It takes time." "You said a few weeks. It's been 6. Things take longer than expected sometimes. You know how it is. I did know how it was. I knew that his brother had now been looking for 3 weeks and hadn't toured a single unit. I knew that his girlfriend had, at some point, moved her skincare products into my bathroom cabinet. I knew that our second bedroom, which I used as a home office, now had an air mattress in it that was permanently inflated, and that I'd been doing late-night work calls sitting on the edge of our bed because there was nowhere else to go. I knew that my husband had stopped asking me how my projects were going, that he hadn't once, not once, asked me how it felt to be in the new role, that on the night I got the promotion, the night I'd worked 4 years for, he had said cool, and asked me to come home so he could tell me his brother needed our couch. I called my best friend. She lives in Hamilton. We've been close since university, and told her everything one Saturday morning while I was sitting in my car in the driveway, because I didn't want anyone inside to hear. She was quiet for a second after I finished. "Are you okay?" she asked. "I genuinely don't know," I said. "What does your gut tell you?" I looked at the steering wheel. "That this isn't about his brother." She didn't say anything to that. She didn't have to. The thing about a marriage going wrong is that it doesn't happen all at once. There's no single moment where you can point and say, "There, that's when it broke." It's more like a slow leak in a wall. The damage spreads quietly for a long time before anything shows on the surface. I had been noticing the damp for a while, the way he talked over me at dinner when we had people over, the way he'd make decisions, dinner plans, weekend plans, people moving into our house, and then present them to me as things that were already settled, the way he'd sometimes look at me when I talked about work, not proudly, but with this flat affect I couldn't quite name, like he was waiting for me to finish. After the $800, I started paying closer attention. I looked at the account history going back 4 months. There were 3 other transfers I hadn't noticed. Smaller amounts, 60 here, 120 there, all to his brother's number. I'm not a confrontational person by nature. I grew up in a house where problems were discussed quietly and disagreements were resolved with a lot of patience and a lot of talking. I wanted to be fair. I wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt. But I also sat on our bed that night and thought about the fact that I was the only one in this household with a steady income. That my husband's consulting hadn't produced a single dollar in 8 months. That our mortgage, on a house I had pushed for, had done the research on, had made the offer on, was being paid almost entirely from my salary. And in that house that I was paying for, I had effectively been given a roommate I hadn't agreed to and a household bill I hadn't approved. I opened my laptop and started looking at things. Not in a dramatic way. Just quietly, the way I approach projects at work. One task at a time. Gathering information before making a decision. I contacted a lawyer in late October. She had an office on Yonge Street, south of Eglinton, and I met with her on a Wednesday afternoon during my lunch break. I wore my work blazer and brought a folder with the bank statements printed out. She was practical and matter-of-fact, which I appreciated. She explained my options clearly. She told me that because we were married, the joint account was joint, but that I was fully within my rights to open a separate account and redirect my direct deposit immediately. She told me what assets were typically equalized in an Ontario divorce. She told me I didn't have to decide anything today. I'm not sure I'm ready to make any decisions, I said. That's fine, she said, but it's good to know where you stand. I drove back to the office after that meeting and sat in the underground parking for a few minutes before going in. I wasn't sad exactly. It was more like something had shifted. The way your vision adjusts when you step out of a dark room into a hallway with better light. I opened a new account at a different bank that same week. I redirected my direct deposit. I moved the portion of savings that were mine alone, money I'd brought into the marriage from before, which I'd kept documented, into the new account. I did all of this quietly. I didn't tell him. I didn't tell his brother. I went to work, I came home, I sat at dinner and asked how everyone's day was, and I waited. My brother-in-law got a job offer in Toronto in November. It was good news, genuinely. I was happy for him. But the job offer also meant they suddenly had an income and no particular urgency to find a place. We might just stay through the end of the year, his girlfriend mentioned one evening, helping herself to leftovers in my fridge without asking. Get our bearings, you know? Save a bit before we sign a lease. I looked at my husband. He looked at his phone. That night, I asked him directly, when is this ending? What? When are they moving out? I want a date. He put his phone down. He looked at me the way he'd been looking at me more often lately. Like I was being difficult. Like I was the problem in this equation. Why are you being like this? I'm asking for a timeline, I said. That's not unreasonable. They're family. I know, and I've had them in my house for 4 months. I'd like to know when that's ending. This is my house too. Is it? I said. I hadn't meant it the way it came out, or maybe I had. Either way, he stood up and left the room, and I sat there at the kitchen table alone, and I thought, okay, now I know where we are. I started staying late at work more often after that, not because I had to, though I often did, but because I'd started to understand that my office, with its glass wall and its view of the parking structure and the coffee that was free and always fresh, was the place where I felt most like myself. I was good at this job. The Brampton project got back on schedule by mid-November. I had a meeting with the senior partners in December, where one of them said my name and the word exceptional in the same sentence. My direct reports trusted me. The work was hard and sometimes thankless, but it was mine and I had earned it, and no one in that building looked at me like I was asking for too much by existing in the space. I started writing things down. Not a diary exactly, just notes on my phone, dates, amounts, things that were said. My lawyer had suggested it, in a gentle way that made it clear she thought I'd need it. She was right. In January, I came home from work on a Wednesday to find that my husband had, without telling me, given his brother and girlfriend access to the storage locker in our building's basement, the locker that held things from before we were married. My grandmother's china, boxes of books, a wooden jewelry box my father had made. His girlfriend had reorganized it to fit their things. Some of my boxes had been moved to the back wall and stacked in a way that wasn't stable. I stood in the storage room for a long moment. Then I went upstairs and called my lawyer. We talked for 20 minutes. I took notes. By the time I got off the phone, I had a list of 3 things to do and a consultation scheduled for Thursday. I am not a dramatic person. I don't make grand gestures. But that night, after he'd fallen asleep, I sat in the kitchen with a cup of tea and I made a decision. Not a loud one, not a screaming and throwing things decision. Just a quiet, clear, completely certain decision. The way I make every decision that actually matters. I moved out on the first Saturday in February. I had arranged it in advance. A one-bedroom apartment in East York, on a street with big maples that were bare now but would be something in the spring. My best friend came with a rented van. We moved everything that was mine, and only what was mine. Clothes, my home office equipment, the furniture I'd had before, the boxes from storage that held my grandmother's china. We finished by 2 in the afternoon. I handed in my key to the building super. I did not leave a note. I texted my husband when I was already at the new apartment. Boxes stacked in the hallway, my best friend assembling an IKEA shelf on the living room floor. I've moved out. My lawyer will be in touch. Please do not contact me directly. His response came 12 minutes later, in all caps, which I won't repeat here. Then 3 more messages. Then a call I didn't answer. Then his brother called. Then, around 9 that night, a voicemail from a number I didn't recognize that turned out to be his mother, who had apparently been filled in on events and had several opinions about my character. I sat on my new kitchen floor, there were no chairs yet, and ate Thai takeout from the container and listened to the sounds of the building around me. Someone upstairs was watching something with a laugh track. A streetcar went past outside. The heat came on and ticked quietly in the radiator. I had a meeting on Monday with 2 new clients. I had a project in Oakville starting in March. I had a lease in my name only, and a bank account in my name only, and a list of things I wanted to do with my weekends now that my weekends were mine. I called my best friend after I finished eating. She picked up on the second ring. "How does it feel?" she asked. I looked around the empty room, the boxes, the bare walls with their white paint, the window with the streetlight cutting through. "Like the beginning of something," I said. And I meant it, not in a tidy, resolved way. I knew there were hard months still coming, lawyers and paperwork and all the small grief of dismantling a life you'd built with someone. But underneath all of that was something else, something solid and quiet and entirely mine. I had worked 4 years for a title and an office. I had worked longer than that, without quite realizing it, for this, for a room with no one else's things in it, and a Saturday morning with nowhere I had to be, and the simple, uncomplicated peace of not shrinking. I didn't need him to understand that. I already did. I think about that storage room a lot, not the things that had been moved, the boxes, my grandmother's china stacked wrong against the back wall, but the feeling I had standing there. It wasn't rage. It wasn't even hurt anymore. It was something quieter and more certain than either of those things. It was clarity. What happened to my marriage didn't happen because of one bad decision or one selfish moment. It happened the way most slow things happen, incrementally, in small choices that each seemed almost survivable on their own. My husband transferred money without telling me. He invited people into our home without asking me. He heard the best news of my professional life and said cool and kept watching TV. None of those things alone would have broken anything. But they were never alone. That's the part I've had to sit with, not what he did, but what I allowed by saying nothing. I kept the peace because I'd been taught that keeping the peace was the same as being good. I mistook endurance for virtue, and the truth is, real integrity, the kind that actually holds, isn't about absorbing what's wrong without complaint. It's about being honest enough to name what's happening, even when naming it is uncomfortable. Even when the person across from you would rather you didn't. I was not honest for a long time. Not with him and not quite with myself. What changed things wasn't the anger. Anger came and went. What changed things was a slower, more deliberate kind of thinking. The kind where you stop reacting to each individual thing and start seeing the whole shape of it. When I printed those bank statements, when I sat in that lawyer's office on Yonge Street with my folder and my work blazer and my list of questions, when I opened a new account and redirected my deposit without drama or announcement, that wasn't impulsiveness. That was me finally thinking clearly, maybe for the first time in years, about what was actually happening and what I actually needed to do about it. I've learned that thinking clearly is its own kind of courage. People don't always talk about it that way. We talk about bravery like it's loud, like it's the moment you slam a door or say the thing you've been holding back. But the braver thing, in my experience, is the quiet Tuesday afternoon when you make a decision and stick to it, when you do the research, when you don't let someone else's reaction talk you out of what you already know to be true. And then there's the part that took the longest, just staying with it. Showing up to work the next morning after a night of voicemails and all-caps texts. Eating takeout on a kitchen floor with no chairs in it and deciding that was okay. Not because it was easy, but because I had decided it was worth it, and I did not let myself undecide. My grandmother's china is on a shelf in my East York apartment now. I haven't used it yet. But every time I walk past it, I think, I got that out. I planned it, I executed it, I followed through. That's all any of us can do, in the end. See clearly, think carefully, and keep going anyway.